Hey, hey, Mom Nation, and welcome back to another episode of our love story with the fantastic, the beautiful Dyanna Eisel. I need an applause button. How are you
Thank you for
today?
having me. I'm good. How are you?
Always wonderful to have you, and always wonderful to talk with you. So I am wonderful, my friend.
Likewise. Happy to be here.
Yes. As we say, our favorite time of the month, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Which always gets kind of a chuckle out of my mama friends out there because it in fact is more favorable than other times. So let's dive right into it. I am super excited to get into this one, Dyanna, because honestly, like, you mind blown before I hopped on with you and we kind of chatted a bit about what we were going to talk about today. Because I will confess right now, this is not something that I do in my marriage, and I am ready to implement this. So let's talk about it, girlfriend. Let's talk about marriage meetings.
Yes, let's talk about a weekly marriage meeting. There are so many things that come up for us in our relationships that we don't prioritize or make time for to talk about. And sometimes they get resolved, sometimes they don't. But there's definitely a really effective way to keep us all on the same page and keep communication flowing. So the weekly marriage meeting is an amazing tool, an amazing way for you guys to keep those lines of communication open and not leave anything behind, but also plan for the future. So some of the things I'm going to go through, some high level topics that you can cover in your weekly marriage meeting. Obviously, feel free to add anything else that you want to that you feel is important. But these are sort of the big ticket items that every relationship goes through and should probably be talking about on a more consistent basis than maybe we already are. So one big pain point for a lot of couples and families is meals. You know what I mean? Like having dinner time and having meals prepared and planned for the week. It's one of those things that, when you became an adult, nobody said, hey, did you know that you're going to need to figure out dinner every day for the rest of your life until you die? No, we didn't think about that. No. But this is where we're at. And it doesn't sound like it's such a big deal, but when you get into the weekly grind of work and kids and activities and all of those things, it can become overwhelming, especially if it's just one parent taking the reins on it. You know what I mean? So
for sure. I totally agree with that. And not to interrupt you there, but it's a big difference, right? Coming from being a non-parent to being a parent, just in terms of meals, because I don't know about you, and this was probably not the healthiest thing, but before I was a parent, package of ramen noodles. Okay, cool. What's in the fridge? Maybe I ate cereal at 10 o'clock that night, whatever it was, right? Yeah. Now we have to be consistent in stuff and nutritionally,
making good
nutritionally
decisions.
Focused with these kids. So it is a bigger, I don't want to call it a burden, but it is a bigger project, right? Yeah. This whole feeding because we got lunch too, breakfast, and all that jazz.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a responsibility to teach our kids about how to keep their bodies healthy too, right? And some of us didn't grow up with that influence. So a lot of us are out here trying to figure it out ourselves and teach our kids how to have healthy eating habits and have a healthy relationship with food, right? So we're not only teaching them these are the foods that you can choose to eat, and then choose these other foods in moderation, some of the junk foods and stuff like that. But also creating that meal structure is really healthy for the family too. I know it's not always feasible because we have sports and activities and work and things like that, but meal times together, even if it's just one per day, is an amazing way to connect with your kids in a very different way where everyone can just sit down and talk about their day. It's really important. I think that's something that if you can do it, if you can pull it off, protect it, because mealtime is just such a powerful way to connect.
I agree wholeheartedly. And in fact, look forward to that. So I am very blessed to have the opportunity and the time to have 2 meals a day with my family. So we do breakfast together. We're not all eating the same thing. I do protein shakes. My husband does, I don't know. You know what I mean? We're all kind of doing different things, but we're there together. And at dinner, we do typically all eat the same thing. And then that's kind of more of a longer session, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's a really important meal of the day to spend together, right? At the end of the day, break everything down, those sorts of things. So the meal planning part of it can become very overwhelming for if it's one person, right? Because not only is it planning the meals every day of the week, but then it's also making the grocery list that goes along with the meals, right? Plus all the extra stuff, all the like snacks and staples, milk, eggs, bread, like all that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? And while it's not, in most cases, incredibly difficult to make a grocery list, it is overwhelming to make meals and then the matching grocery list to go with those things if you're doing it on your own.
Totally agree.
Have someone's input, your partner's input as to like, hey, like, do you have any ideas for meals this week? Like, give me 2 or 3 ideas for dinners because I'm getting tapped out, like I'm running out of ideas, or we eat the same thing all the time or whatever. And for your partner to say like, okay, yeah, like here are a couple ideas we haven't had in a while or whatever, is so much more helpful than just saying like whatever you want. If you just say whatever you want, it's putting the onus back on the other person to try to figure it out themselves. And that's actually like not helpful at all. It's actually putting more weight on that person than they need to. And that's really hurtful sometimes, even if it's not intentional. If you think you're just being accommodating by saying like whatever you want, it's not accommodating. It's like one more thing on my plate that I have to figure out because I can't get your inputs. You know what I mean? So if you have 2 people coming together to talk about, combining their ideas for meals, then it becomes so much easier to like make the grocery list afterwards because you know what groceries you're going to need to like match those meals. You know what I mean? But just having a couple minutes of that meeting to talk about that is going to take so much time and emotional and mental effort off of the person who's sort of like the default, grocery shopper and things like that. It takes so much off of them to do that. So spend a few minutes talking about meals and meal prepping and groceries and like all of that stuff so that it's not just done behind the scenes by one person.
Totally agree. And honestly, like things have gotten so much better over the years since like, our parents had to do this, right? And so don't be afraid to use technology, guys. So anybody out there who knows me is going to be like, seriously, are you talking about groceries right now? Do you even know where the grocery store is? Because I am not that person in our family. So my husband is the one that handles the meals. Do I give him input? Sure. But he handles the meals and the grocery getting and that kind of thing. So it's really funny for me to suggest this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Okay. So the technology piece that I have found that's been really cool, and this is probably very basic. There's probably things that are a little bit more advanced out there that you can get your hands on, but even the Fries app, you can go in, you could pick recipes, right? So like say you want chicken, crock-pot chicken, whatever, I don't know, pick one, and then it will actually make a grocery list for you. Now, obviously, from an efficiency standpoint, you want to make sure you don't already have that, right? Maybe it's a spice or something that you possibly already have in your inventory. So you're going to need to still do a little bit of legwork for that so you're not overbuying. But that could really help the person that is handling it feel a little bit less stressed and a little more organized. So just kind of a little tip there. Oh, and your coupons too will go into that app. So
absolutely. Yeah. All the coupons and things like that pop up are also, really helpful when you're trying to like stick to a budget too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Totally agree. And I know I'm giving them a little precursor. Sorry, Dyanna. I know we're going to talk about this in a minute, but budget I feel like is so important. Even, for groceries and food, even if you're not pinching pennies and you have plenty of money everywhere, I still think it's really important to have a budget so that you're not being excessive, wasteful, that kind of stuff. I don't know, that's just my personal thing.
Sure. I mean, having a budget is going to help you do your overall finances for the month, which we'll get to in a little bit. Right. But yeah, I think that's absolutely applicable to decide on how much money you invest or spend on groceries, because everyone is different. Some people are like, I don't care what brand it is as long as it's chips, you know what I mean? But other people might have preferences that it's like, no, I really like this brand. It has to be this kind, you know what I mean? And I'm willing to invest the extra $2 into this, even if you don't want to, you know what I mean? Yeah, that's totally applicable. The second point after meals is like meetings and appointments that are coming up for the week. So you can sort of pick and choose like how much you share about like, I have a work meeting. If it's an important work meeting that maybe you're feeling some sort of way about, I think it's a great time to bring it up. Hey, I have a meeting on Thursday with my boss feeling a little stressed about it. Just wanted to share that with you. That's coming up. So I won't be available between, these times on Thursday or whatever. Just to be able to create some of that shared meaning, which we've talked about before, builds a lot of emotional intimacy in relationships. Things mean the same to me as they mean to you. You know what I mean? So now with that little nugget of information, your partner can follow up, Thursday morning, like, hey, good luck with your meeting today. Let me know how it goes. And then when they see each other later in the day, like, how did it go today? How are you feeling? You know what I mean? It's like, it feels very seen to know that like your partner knows what you're experiencing and what you're going through and cares to like follow up with you on it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So meetings that are coming up for the week, or to follow up on meetings that happened the week before, and also appointments. Even if you are the parent that's taking your kid to the pediatrician on Wednesday, like, that's still something that your partner should be privy to, right? It's like, 8:00 on Wednesday, I'm taking our kid to the pediatrician for his checkup. Oh, okay, well, let me know how it goes. You know what I mean? Like, even if they don't have a call to action there, like something that they need to do, they're not doing the driving, they're not doing the appointment making, anything like that. It is a way to share the mental load with your partner, to just let them know like what's going on, because that's a common pain point in a lot of couples and a lot of relationships, is carrying the mental load. And the default parent feeling like they're the one that's thinking about everything. They're the one that's planning everything. They're the one that's worried about appointments and scheduling and all of those things. And the other parent sometimes is like, oh, I had no idea they had an appointment. Oh, I had no idea. Oh, they have a cavity. I didn't even know they had a dentist appointment today. You know what I mean? And that feels just kind of like, it can feel kind of deflating when it doesn't feel like your partner is equally invested and like the things that you're doing, like for the family, for the kids or whatever, you know what I mean? So even just talking about it again creates that shared meaning that like we're all on the same page about what's coming up this week.
I agree. And I feel like that is even more important, especially when the kiddos are real young, because there are a lot of decisions to make. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of medical things that come up. You're at the doctor a lot more frequently when they're younger, and there are some big discussions to have. I'm just not going to, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Like, do we vaccinate or not? Or vaccinate or not? Right. You know what I mean? Do we treat this symptom, or do we do a different?
We wait it out. We stay home and treat it. Or when do we know when it's a good time to like go in and see someone? Yeah.
I feel like these are really important discussions to have, and not to be all on the shoulders of one of the parents, especially too, because when I'm feeling stressed, and when I'm like, if there's a big decision to make about my son and I'm feeling some anxiety about it, and maybe you can explain this scientifically because of what you do, but I feel like I kind of lose access to my resources. Like, I'm not as resourceful of a girl as, I am when I'm feeling a lot more calm. And so having somebody that I know, love, and trust, that I know loves and trusts me and my child, to kind of bounce things off of and just be like, hey, am I nuts? Or have you heard this before? Or can you help me research this? Or, just what's your general gut feeling on this? Or what have you seen and heard out there in social media land? Like, I think that is so valuable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it creates more of like a power balance in the relationship, right? I think sometimes in relationships, it's common for people to have an idea of like putting their partner on a pedestal because they are very capable, they're very competent or whatever. So like, I don't worry about that because like they're capable, like they can do that. If you're listening to this and you're thinking like, oh yeah, like my partner totally puts me on a pedestal, or, oh yeah, I put my partner on a pedestal. Like, have you asked, like, do you want to be up there? Like, is that like a place that you want to be or that they want to be? Because it can feel very lonely up there. Yeah. Like, even if it's like, on the other end, it comes from a place of like, yeah, you're smart, you're competent, you make good decisions. Like, I don't have to worry about those things. Sure, I appreciate that you believe in me and you trust me in that way. But it also feels very lonely that I'm in charge of making these decisions, and I'm in charge of, leading our life decisions, big decisions sometimes, you know what I mean? And while I'm glad that you trust me to do that, that doesn't feel like a partnership. That feels like, passive support. Like, you just do whatever you feel like is best. You know what I mean? And again, just like the groceries and the meals, it's like, okay, so that's another thing that like, I just have to figure out myself, guised under, the veil of like, well, I trust you to make good decisions. You know what I mean? But it still feels like a lot of weight.
Yeah, that's a lot of weight. Again, with the technology, Matt and I have a shared calendar. I realize that might not be comfortable for everybody, but for us, it works really well. Of course, I mean, you know our life. We not only are we married, we parent, but we work together too. So it makes a lot of sense for us to understand what the other person has going on for the day, not only to cheerlead them and to check in with them to see how those really big appointments went or those really big meetings went, but also for pet coverage. We don't. My dog is so babied; he's never alone. So
I love
lucky him. So, we need to know that somebody's there to cover the dog or somebody's there, with school pickup and that kind of thing. So I have found that using technology in that way has been extremely helpful.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And if you're not like a big fan of like, using like a shared calendar, like a Google Calendar or something like that, like just have like one of those like desk calendars on your fridge or like in a centrally located place in your house where it's going to be seen, where you can just like jot things in there. So it's like common knowledge, like everyone's aware of like what's going on. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's really helpful too, like to have that shared calendar where it has like high visibility for like the third point, so the third little thing to have in your weekly marriage meeting, which is date nights and self-care days.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, because having that shared information builds anticipation that like something's coming up. You know what I mean? That like, oh, we have a date night coming up on Friday. And so like, it's your turn to pick out, where we're going for dinner or what we're doing or whatever. Like, I'm really excited to see like what we do, where we go, or whatever, or it's my turn. So like, you're going to be super surprised where we go. Whatever, it builds the anticipation that you're going to be spending time together. But it's equally as important to have on that calendar days that and times that you're doing something like on your own, whether it's like with your friends or like by yourself. That also builds anticipation, but it also opens the door for enthusiastic support from your partner, right? Like if I see that he's got like a golf appointment coming up or a golf tournament or whatever coming up on Saturday with his buddies, it's like, hey, so you guys are going out on Saturday golfing. Like, have you guys chosen like what golf course you're going to? Or like, what time do you guys tee off? It's going to be really hot. I'm sure you guys are going in the morning. And just showing that like interest in what your partner is doing also creates shared meaning, which is really powerful for emotional intimacy and safety, right? And so it provides that enthusiastic support for your partner, you know what I mean? So they can feel really good about going and taking care of themselves. I see that you and your friends are going out to brunch on Tuesday. If you guys decided where you're going to go, that's going to be so much fun. Hey, we're going to sit here and watch Bluey and eat chicken nuggets until we throw up. I hope you have an amazing time. You know what I mean? And that feels so good on the other partner's perspective to know that like, no matter what, you got this. Like, I'm not worried about it. I'm not stressing about it. I know that you're not feeling any way about it because sometimes we get resentful, right? Like if we feel like we're not getting our cups filled, it's like, well, that must be nice. Have a great time. You know what I mean? Not that anyone should be passive aggressive in those moments, but it happens if there isn't a balance of like self-care and time together. So to feel that support from your partner is just so relieving so that you can focus on yourself, you know?
I love it. And you know what? I'm hearing in these examples is a lot of communication, Dyanna.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And we always say, like, it all boils down to that, right? Like, that's key.
And it sounds so general. Like, it sounds so just like, yeah, communication. Yeah, we're just talking. Like, are you talking or are you communicating?
Right.
You know what I mean? Are you just like making words and like making noise, or like are you communicating like what your needs are or what's important to you?
Right.
You know what I mean? That's how we build trust and intimacy in the relationship.
I love it.
Yeah. Okay, so here's the big ticket item that you're waiting for. So
last but certainly not least.
Yeah, certainly not least at all. This is probably the biggest one, is finances. So in your weekly marriage meeting, talking about maybe big purchases that are coming up, like a car repair or something like that, or big purchases that happened the week before. You know what I mean? Like there was a leak in the bathroom that had to get fixed or whatever the case may be, but kind of recalibrating on that. Like, okay, so that wasn't an expected expense. Do we need to do something differently for the rest of the month? Or do we need to, pull money from this other account? Or like, what do we need to do about that just to make sure we've hit like equilibrium and like everything's okay? But also just revisiting like your monthly budget occasionally is really helpful. You know what I mean? It's not about, trying to control how someone else spends money. It's about accountability towards a shared goal, a shared commitment, right? Because money does mean something different to everyone. Like we've talked about that in previous episodes, right? Like everyone has a different meaning attached to money. And so if we're aware of that, great. But like when we're looking at the budget, now I can understand that like, yeah, you went to Starbucks twice last week. No big deal. Like I understand that like that's freedom for you. You want to be able to do that. Okay, so maybe because of this bathroom leak, like maybe we need to hold off on like, the gas station pit stops or Starbucks or whatever for another couple weeks just so we can catch up or whatever it is. You know what I mean? But that everyone's always on the same page. Again, this is like a pedestal sort of situation, right? If one partner, and this happens a lot, it's really common, is in charge of the finances, like, oh, I don't know, like they just take care of it. Oh, I don't know, like I don't even look at the bank accounts. Oh, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, sure, you trust your partner, they have their best interest, they know what they're doing and all of those things, but also, do they want to be up there? Right. Like, do they want to be the only one that's, financially literate in the relationship, or do they want you to take an active part in it and to be involved and to know what's going on? You know what I mean? Because that feels like shared partnership, equal partnership, and less like an imbalanced power dynamic, right? Where like you make the rules, you make sure that we're all okay, and I'm just gonna like live my best life. You know what I mean? And then if tragically, and sometimes it does, something happens in the relationship, one partner might be completely oblivious to what the financial situation is. Right. And that's not a good position to be in either, to feel very uninformed. You know what I mean? So I know that you have a lot of input, a lot of valuable advice with this topic too. But the finances is something that's a really uncomfortable conversation. And so a lot of people just avoid it. But sooner or later, it's going to catch up if we don't address it now. And it is a powerful tool. And again, with the shared meaning and the trust, the intimacy in the relationship, this is a big ticket item.
This is giant. And like you mentioned, everybody has a different relationship or a different perception of what money is and what it means to them. Yeah. Case in point, my husband and I both totally different when it comes to that. Me, I don't like excessive spending. I don't like waste. I don't like that. I would rather, if we have excess, I would rather put that into something that we can have fun with, or it goes toward like what you talked about. For example, maybe I know that a roof replacement on the house is going to be in our future in the next couple of years. You know what I mean? So that is a really good thing to talk about, to start planning for. And, not necessarily, I'm not, calling the roofer today, but I do know that in 3 years, 4 years from now, we're going to have to replace this roof. So part of the conversation might be, like you just mentioned, hey, let's cut back on, XYZ, which is maybe a little excessive. So then that way we can reallocate these resources towards something that we know we're going to need. And what that does is, if you start early, then that does reduce the amount of stress that you have when all of a sudden your roof pops a leak, right? Think about that, and having to regroup and figure out where the money is going to come from. Oh my gosh, we have to do it now. Is it an insurance claim? Is it, what are we going to do to remedy this? Because now it's an active leak. It's an issue, right? Where we could have had this conversation on a weekly basis and figured out how to get here, in a more gradual way that is a lot less impactful to our day-to-day budget. Back to what I had said about Matt and I feeling kind of different about spending, I have found that another technology program that I want to introduce, and I promise you, I do not work for them. I do not get any sort of kickback or any money for mentioning them, but is Rocket Money. Have you ever heard of Rocket Money?
Yes. So it kind of susses out where you're spending money. And it's kind of shocking when you see how much money we sometimes dedicate to things that are like perhaps frivolous.
Yes. And I've been using it for the last couple of months, and it's really helpful for me because I can go in and like categorize my transactions. And then so that way I'm not constantly, because, you know, as moms, we don't always have the best memory all the time, right? Like after pregnancy, that kind of goes away. And then,
what?
Yeah, I know, right? Shocker. And then throw in, you know, the stress of sports and kids and homework and all of that, right? And sometimes I don't remember some of our recurring transactions, like what they are for. And so it allows you to go in and put notes, and that way when it does hit the bank account again, I'm like, oh, that's what that is. That's fine. So it actually pulls out, and it will email me if there's been a large transaction, the larger than normal. It tells me so much stuff other than the reoccurring charges, which is a really great feature. You know, that we may forget that we have. Maybe I got a subscription to Apple Music, and then maybe I got a subscription to Prime or whatever it is. And it allows you to kind of figure out, is this worth it to me anymore? Am I using this? Is this something that I can get rid of? It also has a budget feature in there, which I haven't quite completed yet. I just kind of work on it like when I have time. But I can report back later at a later date and let you know how the budget feature works and what I think about that. But I think that the important part is to have some sort of budget, some sort of thing to go by. And that will help the partner, if there is a partner that exists that's like me and spending makes you crazy, because really it does. It makes me very anxious. We could dig into where that comes from, probably in another show, but it does. And it really helps me get off of my husband's back, because all I do is pull up that app and I'm like, oh, this goes to this. Okay, everything looks good. It's fine, you know? So I think that that's really important. I also think that investments are extremely important. You know, when we're younger, you and I have talked about this before, when we're younger, we're in our 20s, maybe we haven't even started our family yet. No one's thinking about retirement. Nobody is, you know, and I'm not even going to get into the whole Social Security conversation here, because who knows? But it's certainly not something that my generation was ever told would even be there for us. So we're told, hey, you're not going to have what the government has set up that we're benefiting from. You know, obviously this is coming from elders. Here, go figure it out. And this isn't something that we were, or at least I wasn't, like if you didn't seek out this education, you weren't taught necessarily, you know, what the best retirement vehicles are, or what can I do now as a 21, 22, 23-year-old to better my situation in the future. And I think that's an important conversation to have as well. How many couples do you have walk through the door that have no retirement and haven't even talked about it?
Oh, a lot of the like younger couples that I have, it's not even a topic of conversation. Like, frankly, you know, right now with like the way that things are, like a lot of people are just trying to get by. They're just trying to do what they have to do. They're kind of like in survival mode, you know what I mean? Because they haven't had a lot of that like adult economic uncertainty life experience yet. You know what I mean? Like we talked a little bit about this earlier, like we've seen some stuff, you know, like we've seen some like economic uncertainty and the ebbs and flows of that. And it's all cyclical, you know what I mean? But, you know, especially right now with what's going on, like it can create a lot of panic for people. And so again, having this financing conversation, like about money, like, do we hold steadfast and like just not do anything right now, like, and just wait to see what happens? Do we invest more? Do we pull out? Like those are all conversations that like cannot be made unilaterally, you know, in a relationship. You know what I mean? If you don't have the answers because you don't feel like you have like the frame of reference or education to like really give like really strong input, that's what the professionals are there for, right?
Exactly.
Like you need to go have a meeting with someone to figure out like, okay, like explain this to me in English, like explain this to me in a way that I'm going to understand so that my partner and I can come to a decision or a compromise about what we're doing moving forward that we feel is best for us. That's what those people are there for. You know what I mean?
I absolutely agree. It's very important to reach out to your resources and to learn as much as you possibly can about investments and retirement and where to put your money so that your money works for you. That's so giant.
Absolutely.
And also, another thing that I want to add too is we have to understand, especially, when we're younger, like you just mentioned, we don't really know this because we haven't experienced a ton of life and we have as an adult, right? But I will tell you, having been an adult now for quite some time, like decades, that markets always move. The housing market's always going to move. That's always going to fluctuate. The stock market's always going to fluctuate. Like this is always going, it's a moving target. It just is what it is and always has been. And I think that it's important that if we have a good understanding of what investments are, how the market works, how it moves, how risk averse are we willing to be, what age are we? So, the younger you are, you could probably afford to be a little bit more risky with your investments versus the older that you are, the closer to retirement that you are, right? And I think this plays a huge part in anxiety and stress.
Absolutely.
Because if you seek that information out and if you gain a good understanding of where you are at personally, try not to listen to, I know it's hard because we love people and we've got family members and things that are probably having quite a bit of anxiety, especially as of late. But this has always happened, right? This has happened in the last few decades that I've been an adult. There's always been anxiety surrounding money, one way or another. Maybe it was a couple of years ago when the housing prices were skyrocketing so darn quickly that we felt like we couldn't keep up. Right. You know what I mean? Like it's just always going to be this, and there's always going to be some level of uncertainty. But the more that we know, the more that we understand where our personal situation is, the age we are, how risk adverse are we, what vehicles make the most sense for us at this point, then I feel like we can sort of calm that stress. And I mean, stress is a killer of many things, not only of us physically, but of relationships, of goals, of dreams, of ideas. And so I just really feel strongly about that. Can you tell?
I can definitely tell. And I love it because it is an important conversation. And so the takeaway from that I hear is like, choose your hard. We can choose the hard of not having the conversation about it because it's really uncomfortable and it is really stressful to talk about finances in a relationship. Or you can choose your hard of like, you could do the opposite. So like we could either not talk about it and just be stressed about it, or we could rip the Band-Aid off and talk about it and normalize the conversation so that it doesn't feel like this huge upheaval every time we're talking about it. Yeah. So like choose your hard. Do you want to live in perpetual stress about it? Or do you want to share some of that mental load with your partner and you guys come together and build what you want to and go for the same goals? You know what I mean? Rip the Band-Aid off.
Totally agree. I totally agree. I love what you said about normalizing the conversation because I don't know if it was similar when you were growing up. But when I was growing up, money wasn't a topic. Like you didn't ask people what they made, obviously. Like you probably still don't. But you didn't talk about it. Families didn't talk about finances, expenses, investments. I don't ever remember being a part of that conversation as a child. I don't ever, and bless my parents' heart. Okay, guys, this isn't a dig against you guys. You did the best that you could with what you had. I get it. But this wasn't something that was on the forefront. And so talking about money, I actually had to unravel that anxiety. And that's probably, we're seeing some insights into my childhood here right now, right? So that's probably why I have the anxiety that I have about, being efficient with my spending, right?
And we certainly didn't learn about it in school.
No.
We didn't learn about.
I had economics. I think the two biggest things that we learned, if I remember right, again, we're going back decades now. My 30th class reunion is coming up, you guys, okay? So this is decades. But I remember learning how to write a check, learning how to balance a checkbook, and learning how to write a basic budget. That was it.
That was it.
Oh, and maybe they said get car insurance because that's important. That might have been a conversation too. But we didn't learn about insurance, life insurance, health insurance.
Taxes, investments.
Any of that stuff. Any of that.
Credit cards, credit card interest rates. Like, we didn't learn about any of that stuff, but companies are out there very eager on your 18th birthday to send you a credit card. And you're just like, cool, free money, until you've got 26% APR rate and you're in debt for the next 10 years trying to pay it off. Yeah. Exactly. Those are things that we just did not learn a lot about, or any, until we found ourselves in that situation.
Right. Until we learned the hard way.
Right.
You're hard.
Exactly. Exactly.
Anyway, I feel like, honestly, like I could go days and days on that conversation right there. Just because I feel so strongly about it. I know a lot about it now, versus then. Wish I would have kind of known then what I know now, type thing.
Right.
But suffice it to say, or to wrap this up, I should say, wow, I am like convinced that the weekly marriage meeting is a must.
Definitely do it. Prioritize it, have these conversations, and just see how that line of communication just opens up in your relationship.
Yeah, agreed. All right, friend, tell us about your 15-minute consultations.
Yeah, definitely. If you want to get in touch with me, you can go to my website, DyannaIselTherapy.com. In the upper right-hand corner, you can click on schedule a free phone consultation, where we can chat for 15 minutes. We can see if we're a good fit, and then we'll go from there.
I love it. Thank you for doing that for our mama community. I know that is so helpful, because personally, I don't care who you are. I feel like it's important to speak to a counselor at some point in your relationship, preferably sooner rather than later. Right, Dyanna?
Totally. Absolutely.
Not when it's an emergency. We've talked about this.
No, not when it's like do or die, like it's this or that. Like, don't wait for that to happen.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, guys, hop on over to our YouTube channel if you want to check out any of our previous episodes. We've talked about a few of them today. It is at MOMnation USA. Sorry, I messed that up. At MOMnation USA is our handle. If you prefer to listen podcast style, then over on your favorite podcast platform, do a quick search for MOMnation Talk Radio. There we are each and every month, and we will see you again next month. Thank you.